Hello everyone.
Hi.
So if you hear some noise in the back, it's our daughter playing Dying Light.
Exactly.
Janina got her first try today.
I looked like a retard.
Are you gonna be a gamer now? We're gonna have a stream going with Janina playing because I think people need to see Janina playing. Like she's literally going up and down with
and
the
then
thing,
my mouth is
with her
open.
mouth is open and jumping. Going. I think we should have a stream going just for Janina playing Dying Light. By the way, she hasn't fought any zombies yet, so I fully expect some.
I fought and killed a zombie
That doesn't count.
successfully.
If she plays Dying Light, she's talking about the
Don't deny
opening
my
scene.
wins.
She's gonna scream so hard during that game. It's gonna be awesome. Anyway,
Yaya is better than I am, so
you're turning into a nerd slowly
I know.
but surely. We are winning.
I also have 2 Star Wars shirts, where one I wear really frequent.
Which one?
My Star Wars shirt I wear.
She has a Star Wars shirt. That is true. Anyway, getting there, which is okay because
Love
Disney
changes everything.
Yeah, Disney is killing Star Wars anyway. That's for another podcast.
The things you do for love.
Exactly. So, including gaming, we are talking. So lots of happening. The mentoring program is starting this month, all that stuff. So I'm going to do more about podcasts about anxiety, but first I wanted to finish a little bit the one about autism. And for that, I want to talk about a very interesting idea. Let's be honest, we don't know what autism is, right? To a part of the medical world, it is a disease that where they're looking to cure. 90% of the money is still going toward finding a genetic cause for autism. So that's assuming it is not a function, it's more on the disease side. Don't get me wrong, ASD is a rough thing, but all functions taking too far can turn into a disorder, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. What is a function? What is the nature of autism? What do I think the nature of autism is? Why do I think that way? If we do not fundamentally understand what it is and the why of it, we cannot help with the symptoms. Now, there are symptoms linked to autism that can make one's life complicated, right? Especially in a world that is not necessarily designed for that.
Yeah.
So, what I want to talk about is an idea of what autism is, but more importantly, a range, an arch that has autism on one side and schizophrenia on the other. The sense that he has not even autism, he has ASD on one side, the symptoms, so autism syndrome disorder on one side, and schizophrenia on the other, where the function basically goes awry, too far one way or too far the other way.
So can you explain that a little bit deeper? Because I think most people will be like, how are schizophrenia and autism linked to?
Right,
together?
exactly. So I think there's actually, those are the two extremes of human personalities, of human function, not personalities, of function taking too far.
Okay.
And one is accuracy, the other one is precision. That's what we're going to talk about. So an accuracy turned too far is autism, a precision turns too far is schizophrenia. But I think those are the functions of humans really that can go either way.
Okay.
So why do I think that way? There's papers on the Strongfit Vault that are talking about what is called a hypo, a hyper prior. So what is a prior? Prior comes from a Bayesian inference model where in the case of humans, prior is prediction versus observation, right? The system is predictive, not reactive. So system makes a prediction and compares it to its sampling of the world. There's always a gap between the two. That gap is called a somatic error. The point of the system is to fix that somatic error, because the better you are at predicting what's coming, the better you are at surviving. The faster you are at reacting to things. Because if you're predictive, you're faster than reactive.
Yeah,
I
so
think
you want
that's
to
pretty obvious.
As little as of a somatic error as possible to be able to survive.
To learn from each. So you're trying to diminish the somatic error because it means you're learning better, right? Right. Because
this might help me in my gaming career, by the way.
Exactly. And so that's why somatic error is anxiety.
Yeah.
Because anxiety has a function of making you work on the stuff so you can fix it faster, so that you can learn better for the next thing that happens the same way, so that you learn to deal with it better, and by dealing better, you have better chance of survival. Right. So learning to deal with the situation is kind of getting the memory of it. That's called a prior. It's not going to stick in the memory. It's going to become almost like an instinctual system that you have, like an instinct, right? But that's what they call a prior. Is once you fix a somatic error, that experience is going to be integrated within your system, not at a conscious level, all the way down to an unconscious level, to learn to deal with this thing. For example, standing up. At first, I stand up and I almost pass out because my body has to learn to navigate with my blood pressure standing up. So every time I go like this is dangerous. The body learns that right before I stand up, I need to get the blood pressure to X, a number X. And as it gets better, you get less and less dizzy standing up. Right, that's the creation of what is called a prior. So what we see interestingly is that in the range of autism, so ASD, they have what is called hypo prior, which means they see the world without the help of a prior. In the case of schizophrenia, they're hyper priors, which is everything is based, the way they see the world is based on their history of seeing the world. Whereas an autistic person has no history of seeing the world. He sees the world for the first time every time. I'm exaggerating, but it's to show you the
why
edges
they are opposites from each other and why they're both on the other side of the extreme.
Right, because you need both. So as usual, what you need is a balance between both. You need to, so why is it a problem to have too much prior or not enough prior? So this is called accuracy versus precision. So let me explain that using a picture idea. Right, if you see with the machine learning now, for pictures, they actually use prior because everything is a Bayesian inference model, right? So what does that mean? That means, for example, the pixel that I have takes very good pictures from a software perspective. So what the machine is learning is when it takes a picture, for example, is at night, right? Which part is the sky? Which part is not the sky? Is that a tree? Is that stuff? Why? Because, for example, if I take a portrait of a picture, I need to understand that the focus should be on the person in the portrait, but kind of blur the back, right? So that the portrait stands out more. That's what machine learning does when it takes a picture on the portrait. That's why on your phone you have different types, right? If you do cinematographic, they're going to blur the back to have the subject coming more like a portrait or things like this, right? So let's take a case of a portrait. The machine knows that this is the shape I'm supposed to follow. Everything else is kind of going to take a step back a little bit, right? So that I get better precision out of the front model, losing a little bit of the back. So in that case, the picture is not accurate. It is more precise because I see the front person more because I lose less energy on the back. So I don't look at everything, I just look at the portrait because I put everything in the back, but the thing that comes forward. That picture is more precise. It is also less accurate.
Yeah.
If I have a picture where I can see everything sharp, I am more accurate, but I'm less precise because now I'm paying attention to everything in the picture, but less to the center subject. Does that make sense? Right. So
it's a very good explanation, actually.
Right. Pictures are great. So machine learning is actually mimicking humans in that sense. So what does that mean? It means autism is a very accurate picture, which means it sees everything. Schizophrenia is a very not accurate but very precise picture, which means it sees one thing very well and forgets the rest. So what does that mean symptom-wise? Case of schizophrenia, which means I am capable of learning for history, but that's all I see. If I push that too far, I could see a world that exists only in my own mind because it's never corrected by the sampling of the world.
Yeah.
Those are called delusions. Because what I think is happening actually is happening. So it gets to the point where I see things happening. This is why you see a tremendous paranoia within schizophrenia because everything is based on history, everything is based on you and everything. So paranoia is not the aliens are after me. Paranoia is that car is white for a reason.
Yeah.
But that reason relates to you.
Exactly.
The reason it relates to you because it relates to your own history. It relates to your priors. What you've learned from life. All your paranoias are based on what you've learned from life. So they're based on hyper priors. You have a very, very precise idea of the world, so precise it doesn't even match the real world. It only matches your inside world, what you believe your delusions to be. So literally, perception creates reality.
So you get actually very little information from the world where...
It doesn't matter. You get the information, you're just not looking at it.
Yeah.
It cannot... So you know what you see isn't real, but it doesn't matter because to your system it becomes real. Because you're so precise, you're only focusing on the portrait in the picture and you don't see the back. You are very precise but not accurate. So then you cannot sample the world. You can sample the world, but it has almost no effect to your prediction system. So the somatic error is monstrous. On the other side, you have so ASD that is extremely accurate. What is the problem with that? That means that you're getting information all the time at the highest level. For example, when I look at a picture and I have a portrait, I don't need to see the top corner over there in a very precise way. It's distracting.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't need to see all the dust, or you don't.
It's distracting. When you first come into your house, the fact that the carpet or whatever is not placed exactly right is not life-threatening.
Well, I don't. I'm not sure if I agree with that
But
statement.
that's why you're autistic, honey.
I'm not sure if I agree with that statement.
But in order to survive, you need to understand what is a threat, what is not. Right?
Yeah.
So you sample the world, and at some point you're going to have to give it a hierarchy of systems, right? Where you're like, all right, this is life-threatening, this is not. I'm going to spend my energy toward this, but not toward that, because energy, Thanos was right, energy is finite. So in the problem with autism, then, with ASD, is that you are sampling the world to the most accurate way constantly. There is no prior. So you are not doing it from history. Like, it's a machine learning system that is basically taking a picture as it is. The problem with that is it's not doing what a picture is supposed to do, which allows you to see the subject you're interested in. It makes you distracted for everything. So that would mean that the world would be very loud constantly.
Yeah, so that hence why, like, the main thing you hear is, I feel overwhelmed. Right?
I feel overwhelmed because I have a very accurate view of the world constantly. We're not going to say too accurate, but if you can't deal with it, it will be very overwhelming. So the problem with that too is fear is based on a predictive mechanism. Someone with schizophrenia could be fearless in the sense of they only see what they believe to be true, right? So that means that the amount of information that they absorb is only based on their priors, based on their own history. So the world is known, almost is known to a fault.
Because, yeah, exactly.
To a fault.
They don't know. They just.
But they think they do.
Yeah, exactly.
So in their mind, they do. Yeah. So the world is always known. Sounds boring, by the way. But so they make shit up, and the shit exists from almost a physical perspective. But you could see how there's almost a fearlessness into that because everything is known. Everything is based on your own history. Whereas on the other side, because an autistic person receives everything constantly from the world, not from their own priors, the hyper-prior idea, then everything is scary because everything is new. Anything that is new to the system has to be dealt with because it could be dangerous. So everything is dangerous. Everything is scary. So you could see autistic people hate transitions, hate everything is new, and you could see why they go back to always loving rituals and things like this, because this is the only moment you're safe. So because you do the same thing all day, you become safe.
Yeah, you rely on it and you see that as a safety, and that's also why it's so physically painful when a routine is
broken.
It's not that, and also when there's a negative part in the routine because you start to feel unsafe because there's all of a sudden your routine, the safety space you created, is not safe anymore.
But if you have a good routine of positive things, then what you see is everything is safe because you know it, because you receive it's very strong all the time, but it's a known quantity, right? Unless you push it too far, and then everything becomes. But then you don't make it. Then you won't make it.
Everything pushed too far is dysfunctional at some point, right?
That's why ASD is, and then that's why you'll see also the aggression, the fear level, the anxiety, is because everything is being received stuff. But this is why you see the need for rituals. This is why you see the aggression. This is why you see all this, because everything is very loud constantly. So you will be overwhelmed very fast. So what I think is, so on one side we have ASD, the other one we have schizophrenia. So on one side we have hypopriors, on the other one we have hyperpriors. I believe that arch between accuracy and precision defines the human experience. So all personalities will go toward more accuracy or more precision, depending a little bit on of what anyway. But I believe that is a fundamental arch of human beings, that one side is autism, the other one is schizophrenia. That is defined epigenetically, that is depending on the society you live in. The safer the society, the safer you are physically, the more you can start to go toward a system that allows you to be more accurate. And why we see, this is why I think we see autism rising in the West. It is not because of stress or things like that. It's because if you look at the quality of an autistic person, this is someone who's this is a hyper specialist. So what is the point of a schizophrenic person if we go too far? So not, you know what I mean? When I say schizophrenic, that's not the point of evolution. That's taking too far, but you get the idea.
As a function. As
a function versus autism as a function. What we see with autistic people is we see hyper specialists. I believe the point of autism is to create savants. What are savants? Savants are hyper specialists in human coding. There is a difference between a savant and a genius. A genius is Einstein, who can work the math, had an idea, and for there work the math and develop the whole stuff. A savant is Ramanujan, who was a prime number, incredible savant, who knew the answers. Whenever he was asked why he was given the answer, he told everybody his goddess, he was Indian, gave him the answer because he didn't know why he knew, he just knew.
Yeah.
So he took a high school book of mathematics, and out of that created, I think it was like 3,000 theorems or something like that. Some existing, some not, that to this day, 150 years later, we're still catching up with him. And by the way, out of the, I think it was 3,000, out of the 3,000, I think 10 or 20 have been proven incorrect. Yeah, he had a success rate that was amazing. To this day, we're still discovering stuff of what he did. And you're talking, I think it was 1840, something like that. So he sent the papers to England, and one of the guys saw his genius, brought him over. He died very young, in 35 or something like that. Yeah, from health complication in England. But in the short term that he had, he was able to create so much. They talk about it in the Good Will Hunting movie. That's who they talk about, is Ramanujan. He was a savant. He didn't know how he knew what he knew.
Yeah.
He just knew he was correct. And he said his goddess was giving him the answer. Einstein is a genius. There's a difference between a savant and a genius. And I think the point of autism is to create savants. And if you see savants, they're always based on human coding. Math is created by humans, at least the symbols, right? So a savant is good at music, letters, numbers, shapes, all created by humans. So it's always human coding based. Autism, the point I believe of autism is to allow us to be hyper specialist at human things. So it's to further human society. That can only happen once the species is safe enough, has fixed enough things that we can move toward that step of bringing hyper specialists that will not be good at anything else but human coding. You could see how the need for a safety in society be there. Schizophrenia would be the other, would be someone who's capable of surviving anything into the world because it doesn't matter, his internal world is that strong.
Yeah, I find that a very, very interesting way of phrasing it. Like the safer the society, the more there is a need for people on the...
Or specialists, yeah.
Yes.
And that's what we see. We see.
If you need to survive, you need to be a little bit good at everything.
Autism is 1 in 44. 20 years ago, it was 1 in 5,000. So yes, testing has gone up. We are better at testing and stuff like that. But that does not explain the jump that we see from 20 years ago to this day. Some of it is for sure more testing and stuff like that, but not all of it. It's a humongous jump, and I think there is a reason for it because it's a function. Now, is ASD taking that function too far? Yes. Nature is a harsh mistress, and I believe nature is trying to create savants and does not always succeed.
No.
So you get some symptoms that are hard to deal with, especially in a society that might not be ready for that. We're not there yet. We're getting there.
But there are also people who are, for example, non-verbal, but are very intelligent and very good at
yeah. So there's non-verbal people. Like I'm going to meet one on Saturday that is graduated as a PhD from Harvard. He has to non-verbal. So how does he do it? He has to spell. Like, one letter at a time. It's like a hawking. It's the same idea. One letter at a time, and they write books and they have PhDs, and then so they actually are smart.
It has to be a function.
Right.
Otherwise
so
they
it's
will not be able
exactly
to,
they're smarter in their field than a lot of people. They're just not being able to connect to the world physically because there's certain things that are not working. The work we need to do is understanding those. Why those things happening. So it's very interesting, but you're going to end up in the beta brain waves a lot when you study autism. What's very interesting is my own experience with autism is the kids, for example, because we deal a lot with kids, but even the adults, they suck at eccentric contraction. And then you see the non-verbal issue and stuff like that. What's interesting with a beta brainwave is a thing you use during exercise to, for example, to resist movement. So more like an eccentric face that a trainer would tell you to do.
Yeah.
Like resist the movement, because that's how we teach people to lower the squat, is resist the squat. That's a beta brainwave, and when we see is autistic kids that drop down, that are incapable of resisting. That is the same brainwave as the speech and certain things like that, and autistic people are known to have an issue. I have papers on that on the Vault with beta brainwave. So there are certain things in there that if we could understand better, we could make the symptoms less heavy to carry, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. So we need to deal with anxiety, we need to deal with certain symptoms, we need to increase motor from autistic people, but the problem too is they're diagnosed with ASD when they are 2 and they're treated as retarded kids and not autistic kids, and they stop moving correctly, and nutrition is a problem, and if they lack the eccentric isometric that we see, that's going to hinder their movement, and since no one is making them move, it just goes downhill from there, and as they grow they don't get stronger. So I had that with she's 27 now, and I'm starting to train her right now, and we saw progress because I'm pushing her. I'm making her do heavy shit, I'm pushing her, and right away the body is responding. But before it was just easy cardio, because again, it's very hard to see a non-verbal like a biter and whatever and realize that there is a person behind that. Right away you think retarded. It's just everybody does. It's very hard to realize that person has there's an intelligence PhD Harvard level behind, and yet an incapacity to control certain things from the body. And so most people associate ASD with a disease of the mind as much of a disease of the body, and all this is wrong. There is certain physical consequences to ASD that we need to fix, but we need to understand where they come from first.
Yeah, and even I have a very hard time with this, like with eccentric movements and everything.
Yeah, it freaks you out.
It freaks me out like crazy, but it doesn't mean that I'm not athletic or that I'm not strong. But it's just something I have to focus on more. And for more extreme cases, it's true in that sense too.
They can't sit down. They just but they're very strong going up. So we do that with box squats, where they're very strong going up but coming down is a headache. So there's something there that we see repeatedly. The glutes is an issue. Like there's certain thing there, certain patterns that just keep being repeated. There has to be something there. We don't know because it's not studied, because it's still seen as a behavioral problem that the brain doesn't work well, and the only way is to downregulate the kid through drugs. And if you remember the last podcast, downregulation leads to panic attacks. So I think that over downregulation of the kids only lead to more aggressive behavior.
It's the pushing that helps actually.
And remember, they haven't moved since they're 3 years old because again they've been treated a certain way.
And by the way, what does it to someone if you've constantly been told that you need help with certain things? At some point you believe it.
Yep.
And I wanted to talk a little bit, like, how did you, for example, train that 27-year-old athlete that you're training right now?
Right. So it was interesting because first of all it was way too much cardio, right? So I was like, oh, let's lift some stuff. But we talked about this, right? The problem with the abstract is like if I said 10 reps, she would freak out at 8 or 9. So I was like, so I did the Q-1 idea, which means we said 10, but we only at 8, we told her that it was okay, and that actually helped. But more importantly, 8 reps is hard to get a win because 8 repetition was way too abstract. So what I did is I set up chairs, and I made her squat in each chair, and then squat 1 rep, then move on to the next one, move on to the next one, so that there was an end that she could see of the sequence of training. And then after that, we took a med ball and she had to carry it to someone and then back. And then every time, she was very strong, she would throw the 15-pound, 20-pound D-ball from like 3 feet and then carry it back and things like this. So what we did is I took away the abstract notion, gave her a line, gave her a simple win. You take the ball, you carry it over there, you give it back and forth. So we started to do heavier carries that way, and that worked really well. But the idea was to remove the abstraction.
Yeah.
The idea of do reps, do 10 minutes, do things like this is we're gonna have a specific goal, which means take the med ball, take it over there.
Right.
Remove the abstract. Let's get a win. And what I was able to get is a greater intensity out of her. When she was starting to get to mouth breathe, and that's going to be the key forward. Yeah. Resilience is key. Stress, like distress tolerance, is very, very important.
Yeah, cute.
But you need to push people to get there. The human body is designed to be pushed. So imagine people that barely move, given drugs, bad nutrition all day. Yeah, they're gonna have behavioral issue, but who wouldn't? That might not be necessarily autism based. That might be just reaction to, like imagine if they haven't, if they barely moved. No, imagine if they barely moved since they were 3 years old because they were always, because they were aggressive in their behavior, then they were put on drugs and everything, and constantly down-regulated. We talked about it. Then you cause a constant panic attack, especially from someone that find the world threatening because of the nature of autism. So your stress hormones will be through the roof while you're incapable of ever expressing them physically. I'm pretty sure that would not help the person. Let's put it this way.
The less they're exposed, the worse it's going to get, because the less you stress them, every stress is going to be greater at some point.
Right. Yeah, and on top of it, you have breathing issues that will make more susceptible to stress hormones, like we talked in the last podcast, because the breathing issue is because of the anxiety going up, but also because of the fact that they're not training and then the drugs are not helping. So you could see how this turns into a vicious cycle really, really fast.
Yeah. So what was the biggest difference for that athlete between the session she did before and the sessions? Like
stress.
What was the behavior that you saw instantly, and what was the behavior that you saw later on?
Right away was like, so she was starting to mouth breathe.
Yeah. There
was like an intensity to her. She was like, and then suddenly she was like, okay, I'm done. And then she left. But because suddenly she reached intensity.
Right.
Which she could not before. So at first she was carrying, like walking, almost like without coordination, but like slow and everything. And by the end, she was almost running one way, running the other, like very coordinated, very intense, mouth breathing, and then she was calmer after that, slept better. She has just had a better day.
Yeah.
But because we pushed intensity. Anyway, let's keep it short because I want those podcasts, because it's a lot of information. But if you want to know more about it, just put it in the comments. And then we'll talk a little bit more about anxiety on the next one.
All right.
Sounds good?
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.